It's probably not surprising to most people watching this video, but a lot of anti-SJW nerd types don't traditionally like female characters taking a starring role in any property, and they hate it even more than this character is physically strong. Now, why am I talking about this right now? It's because the new trailer, which showed Natalie Portman's muscles in Thor, Love and Thunder, came out last week, and it got some people talking because she clearly has put in the work to get in shape for this role. And you can probably guess some of the internet's reaction to this new Thor character, kind of like seemingly taking over the mantle of a superhero who is a woman who has muscles. So I wanted to talk about this whole thing to do with visibly strong women in media, and I want to talk about that first, and then I want to talk about Encanto, because a lot of people loved Luisa from that movie because she also was visibly very, very strong. And then I also want to talk about Abby from The Last of Us, because all of these characters to different degrees have suffered a backlash primarily from male nerd right-wing types, and I kind of want to talk about why that is. Why do people get so angry when the female characters in their media do seem visibly strong? And in the case of like a lot of them could easily win a fight against any man who plays these video games. So there's a lot of fragile masculinity involved in this. There's also a lot of just like objectifying women and seeing women primarily as objects for sexual gratification. So we are going to talk about all of that today, and it builds on nicely from two videos I made before. One was about like Lara Croft and Aloy and people complaining that they were ugly women characters, which made no sense. And then I made another video about, ironically, also a Thor character, Fat Thor from God of War Ragnarok, and people complaining he was like too fat and out of shape. And I talked about like how male body standards have impacted me myself, even someone who is like in relatively good shape and exercises a lot and pretty athletic. These sorts of standards we see in superhero movies of people all looking like Chris Hemsworth, I think are really, really damaging for men as a whole. So we're going to talk about all of that today. But before we get any further, if you want to support my channel, please like the video, maybe leave a comment. We're trying to hit 75k in, I guess, the relative near future. For every 5k, we get a new chocolate orange. Help me build this pyramid up. Also, if you want to follow me on social media, at the Kavernacle on Twitter and on Instagram. I'm trying to build up my Patreon with as many $1 to $3 patrons as possible, and the benefits of that at the moment are getting access to my Nintendo Switch friend code and also the private patrons Discord server, so please check that out. Join our community on the subreddit, and also check out my second channel, the Kavernacle Extra, where I archive my live streams, including last night and Sunday nights. So like I said, this video was inspired by Natalie Portman. So first I want to read out about her talking about her workout routine, and then show you some of the internet's reaction to her being, you know, visibly strong, because in a lot of roles Natalie Portman is a pretty like slender woman, doesn't have massive muscles or anything like that, but for this role she has put on a fair bit of muscle. So this article came out in September. So Natalie Portman speaks on her wild muscle gains for Marvel Return. So Natalie Portman sat down with Vanity Fair to talk about her MCU return as Jane Foster. Portman first opened up about the kind of training that she went through while preparing for the transition into the mighty Asgardian. It was really fun. I worked with a trainer, Naomi Pendergast, for I think it was 4 months before shooting, and then obviously all the way through filming. We did a lot of weight training and a lot of protein shakes, heavyweight training that I haven't ever done before. Of course, I never really aimed to get bulky. It was very physical, so it was a lot of both agility work and also strength work. Definitely helps you get into character, and it definitely changed the way I move. You walk differently, you feel different. I mean, it's so wild to feel strong for the first time in my life. So I'm just going to show you some pictures quick. So here is a still of the trailer, and you know, visibly you can see her tricep is very defined, also a bit of her shoulder and her bicep. And then if we get some other photos from the set and just her over the last couple months, there she is, and clearly has a lot more broad shoulders than you traditionally see her with, and more physically defined on her upper body. And then here's another picture where she looks like relatively still pretty skinny and stuff. So it's not like totally insane she's made this transformation. Like she said, she's been working with a really good trainer, had all these protein shakes and working out. So how did a certain section of the internet react? So the Uber Geek Ha ha ha, wait, is she? No, come on. The simps in these comments are getting so moist over this image. This was so bad. I'm so angry at what this trailer implies they're doing with Thor. Time to buy a mic and yell at the internet. Nerdrotic saying, are those real or CGI guns? And then the Uber Geek guy saying, it's a stunt double with her face put onto it. Welcome to the FemCU. Other people, F this. She looks whack. Anyone who has seen Natalie Portman over the years would absolutely know that there is no possible way she could get those spindly arms that size. Plus, that body double has way more breasts than Natalie Portman has without muscle. Calls her buff, bro, literally where? For a woman of Natalie Portman's frame to put on that kind of muscle, her resting heart rate would be around 230. It's like asking a motorcycle to haul a trailer cross country. Even if you got that engine going that hard, the frame would give out, so that's a stunt double. If you have any idea what that last comment is talking about, please let me know. Like, my resting heart rate is between like, I think like 74 and like 79 or something like that, and I'm 6'2", 84 kilograms. Natalie Portman isn't even that large. Like who has a resting heart rate of 230? But I just think it's really, really funny that they can't accept that Natalie Portman may have put on this muscle herself. They can't even believe it's actually her. And it's so crazy to me because it seems like these people have never seen a woman in real life. They've never seen a woman put on muscle. They've never seen a woman who probably is physically in really, really good shape on their upper body, because how can you not believe that a very wealthy celebrity who has seemed to keep herself in good shape all her life couldn't put on muscle if she had like really good personal trainers who helped her for months and months and months? It's not even like that big of a difference. She of course had like skinny arms, and now she visibly has broad shoulders and defined biceps and triceps. But again, not the weirdest thing ever. She's not like completely jacked. It's just insane these guys cannot even accept that a woman can do this. And of course there's all the thing about like the woke agenda, how she is becoming more muscly to overpower Thor and she's replacing Thor because of feminism or something like that. So I guess we start with that to show you that a lot of these types will not accept women getting strong through traditional means because they think it's like unrealistic, or like Natalie Portman could never do that because she's a woman. It just speaks to these guys' inherent bigotry. Now, I wanted to read this out from my past video to show you why these guys often do not like, I guess, women with big muscles, or see them as, I guess, less attractive or less feminine and stuff like that. It's basically because of the women's body standards we have today, because there's a certain body image that men put on women to, I guess, declare them sexually attractive. And if they do not have these features, then they are ugly, or they're being made more masculine for some sort of nefarious purpose. So this made me laugh back in the day, but basically Aloy is the main character from Horizon Zero Dawn and Horizon Forbidden West. Now, I really like both these games. I'm currently making my way through Forbidden West. Way better than Elden Ring, better graphics, and also in the actual world, there are many people who are attracted to Aloy, because although she's not like a supermodel, she is an attractive character visually, and she's an attractive personality to a lot of these people, which makes this comment even more funny. So Apex Alpha, this is about a year ago. Is it me, or Sony be making their lead female protagonist look masculine as hell? Barely no curves or rough, non-feminine features, unlike the average woman, like cough cough, The Last of Us Ellie. Just saying my 2 cents. Pick from the game on the left, fan made on the right. Hire fans, don't hire fans. So here is a picture of Aloy with a scowl on her face in the game, and here is a supposed fan-made upgrade where Aloy is wearing makeup, she has her eyebrows done, and she also is wearing lipstick. But the thing is, it was actually from a satire post where someone said, hey everyone, I decided to make a less political Aloy, and the guy doubled down when he got like absolutely ratioed, saying, a lot of butthurt people on here for an opinion wants to see more feminine women in video games where a female lead is presented. I thought freedom of speech existed in the US. Wow, the world is far gone. These women are very beautiful and got makeup on. Also, their heroes are warriors. People act like women never presented with makeup in a badass role at the same time. It's all fictional characters. Ladies and gentlemen, remember, truth triggers, lies don't. We need to let truth become popular again and stop sugarcoating stuff. The world has become too soft. Most adults have no backbone anymore. Bunch of people who live and wait to be triggered, such as sad and pathetic existence. I think it speaks to how sexualized female characters are when even someone like Aloy is scrutinized for not being good looking enough. Like, I find that absolutely bizarre, because Aloy is good looking, and to think that she's not because she isn't overtly sexualized just, again, proves my point that in this media we do have this sexist culture where women are depicted mainly as sexual objects, or even if they are good characters, they still have that element to them. Now, I'm going to make a whole video on this because you guys will know I'm a massive Metal Gear Solid fan, but I think something that constantly lets down Metal Gear Solid is the sexualization of its female characters, and the female characters are often very interesting characters and they're very good characters, but there is just way too much sexualization of them, and Quiet is the culmination of this, where apparently there was some reason why Quiet had to wear an extremely skimpy outfit all the time, and there was no good reason for it, because in the lore of the game, Quiet, like several other characters, she gets her energy through photosynthesis. So does a character called The End, and so does a character called Code Talker. Notice these two old dudes wear quite a lot of clothes, and she doesn't. And then in my mind, it completely detracted from her character, because her whole character story is actually pretty interesting and I like her as a character, but she just looks like this the whole time, and it's really distracting because why does she look like that? And it just seems like quite gross at the end of the day. But then this is a theme in Metal Gear Solid. Like, you can look down Eva's top in Metal Gear Solid 3, but again, interesting character. And then you have like good characters like the boss who aren't really that sexualized. It shows that Kojima and his team could make these characters without doing this, but they kind of chose not to. I think it's a lot better in things like Death Stranding. It speaks to the general culture where this is somehow like acceptable to depict women just as these sexualized objects, and it detracts from their character massively if they even do have an interesting character. And more often than not, these women often do not have an interesting character arc, or they aren't really characters at all, they just exist for the male gaze. Now, moving on to more visibly strong female characters, like Natalie Portman is, I guess, on the other end of the scale, because although she is looking buff at the moment, I wouldn't say it's anything like really notable. She doesn't look like Gina Carano or something like that. But there was a massive backlash to Encanto by a lot of these people too, because of the character of Luisa, who obviously you've probably seen, pretty like iconic look now, is one of the characters who is very tall with very well defined biceps, like absolute unit. And a lot of people do love this character, which is good. But there was a significant backlash, which we're going to get into, which again speaks to my point that women even looking like this as like one-offs or in like a minority of media, getting this backlash shows how normalized and conditioned we've been to accept women looking a very certain way, which is often very sexualized. So I just want to give some context quick before getting into the backlash. So apparently Encanto artists had to fight for Luisa to have her signature muscles. Luisa's gift comes in the form of her strength, which is impressively superhuman. Though her story also focuses on her internal strength as well as physical, Luisa's muscles play an important role in showcasing her gift of strength, though according to Encanto artists, she almost didn't have them. According to the Mary Sue, Dylan Ekron, a character modeling supervisor at Disney, took to Twitter to talk about Luisa and how hard it was to get Disney executives on board with her muscles. I think we all just wanted to do it in a way that worked well with the style and really made sense for the character, and I'm really proud of the way that she turned out, Ekron said in the original tweet, though their account is now private. The entire team was so awesome, I just pushed buttons in the right order. Now, in terms of like the merch sales, the people selling this stuff expected the other characters to be more popular, but then this article goes on to say, except the supply isn't meeting demand. According to a HITC, Luisa merchandise has been selling out fast, especially compared to her counterparts, and parents are calling out the discrepancy. One wildly viral post on Facebook calls attention to the fact that Disney likely assumed kids would want the classically beautiful character the most, and while Isabella definitely ticks off many of the traditional Disney princess boxes, her story, while compelling, isn't the one resonating with most people. So this is the post. The artist for Encanto had to really fight Disney to let Luisa have big muscles, because we can't pretend Disney isn't superficial and bigoted. Anyway, joke's on them, because little girls have gravitated towards this buff AF character, and they were not prepared for the amount of demand for Luisa merch when they made a bunch of Isabella. Turns out kids want giant muscle lady. Thanks, I love it. So there was a lot of like general backlash about this, but probably like an article that became the most infamous was on The Federalist by Jeff Wright, titled Encanto's Luisa is way too beefy for a woman. Women are wonders of God's creative goodness. In an assault on reality, Luisa marks the truth by substituting masculinity for femininity. My family was late to see Encanto, and I had heard numerous positive reviews of the film. Having now seen the movie and finding much to enjoy, I nonetheless see problematic cultural undertones from the character of Luisa. On the surface, the character trope is merely another tired example of Hollywood being unable to present womanly strength in any other way than this woman is literally physically strong. This particular storytelling rinse and repeat is both exhausted and exhausting. Hollywood has collapsed feminine strength into this singular presentation, one that most conceals the ways in which women are distinctly strong. Luisa's hulky physiology is the most immediate aspect of her characterization and the component of Encanto's visual world that grabs the viewer the most viscerally. The most superficial reading of her as a character is that her design is about representation for women who aren't shaped like the typical Disney stereotype. This idea apparently carries some weight in the broader culture, despite the simple reality that no one who sees Encanto has ever met a woman who looks like Luisa. Now, that isn't to say that some women do not exist who share some characteristics or even combinations of characteristics of Luisa. Luisa stands above not just the men in her life, but even enormous natural features in her world. She has a jawline to rival Dick Tracy, scouring the entirety of the internet for a handful of women who can resemble Luisa under special circumstances is to prove the rule by demonstrating how scarce the exceptions are. Encanto clearly isn't ignorant of traditional female stereotypes. In fact, the portrayal of women drawn from the traditional family culture of Colombia, which woke Disney feels okay portraying, is quite excellent. Otherwise, mum heals people by feeding them. Even stereotypical criticisms of women make it into the movie. One woman's emotions swing wildly from sunny skies to literal storm clouds. Another woman hears everything and is seen as an untrustworthy gossip. The developing human brain is a sponge, and its ability to uptake complex patterns of information is remarkable. Disney executives know their stories shape what children think of as normal. Can we hope that parents who rightly control what media shapes their children's sense of normal are equally aware? Women are wonders of God's creative goodness and wisdom. As part of the ongoing assault on reality, Luisa masters the truth by substituting masculinity for femininity. Women are strong indeed in uniquely feminine ways, and in ways that contrast with currently fashionable, destructive nonsense. Families who want to see their children live well better get on this. Decide where Disney gets to come into your house and how to talk to your kids in a way that helps them love the true, good, and beautiful, while recognizing and rejecting this kind of dehumanizing messaging Luisa represents. We live in a constant propaganda onslaught. This isn't the time to get lax. Where to even begin with that article? I guess I would say he's talking about the stereotypical depictions of women being in the film and how Luisa isn't like one of them. Isn't that like a good thing? So you have a broad range of different female characters representing, I guess, broad ideas about women. And it just shows you so much these people think someone like Luisa is like a danger to your children, because it makes your children think that, yes, women can have muscles. Women can be physically strong. This is nothing new. Because women being strong is normal in society. Just because it isn't shown in your media so much, which says so much about the media, doesn't mean this isn't a thing. How many women play rugby? How many women do combat sports? How many women play loads of physical sports where you have to be quite sizable in your muscle mass? This happens all the time. You only have to watch things like the Olympics or female sports to see female athletes who look like this, including people who do resemble Luisa in some ways, although of course she is pretty exaggerated because it's an animated show. You do see this a lot. The problem is your media does not show this as normal, therefore people like this don't think it's normal, and maybe children won't think it's normal. And I would also say, to me myself, this is a reaction I had to seeing Abby in The Last of Us, and it's not that I hadn't seen any women who look like Abby from The Last of Us, because I've seen plenty. It's that I'd never seen that represented in games in this way. And that's why for a lot of people, I think it was so striking, because here is one of the main characters you play as who is visibly very, very strong. And I'd say this is why a lot of people had this reaction to Encanto, because you do not see women who look like this in media, despite women like this existing and being like a massive part of society. So I find this all like pretty hilarious. Of course, this guy is very, very religious, has his whole views about like what is traditional and what is feminine, and that I guess like no women can be physically strong because that's like a man thing. I don't know. Of course, the misogyny is absolutely flowing through, and it also ties in nicely to the whole assault on so-called woke Disney, poisoning your children's minds with depictions of physically strong women in a film that shows loads of different women, so it's just one character in the film, which maybe will show your child that yes, women do come in all different shapes and sizes. They all don't look like supermodels like you often see in even animated shows and general media. So I talked about Abby while talking about Luisa and Encanto, and I guess how Abby is different from both of the things we've already spoke about is because Natalie Portman isn't like insanely jacked that people cannot accept it, right? Encanto and Luisa, well, that is an animated film, which is very, very stylized, but The Last of Us Part 2 is trying to be somewhat more realistic. It's gritty in tone. The character models are very, very realistic. And this is the excuses that a lot of anti-SJW nerds hid behind is, well, Abby is unrealistic because no women in the apocalypse could look like that. Because we all know in a game that takes a lot of liberties with reality in terms of like massive fungal infection, which turns people into these zombies based on a nature documentary. Of course, you probably saw that with the ants. And then you have like a backpack that carries loads of guns, and you have like a little journal where you can swim underwater and it won't get wet. Their problem is a woman with muscles. And the problem with this as well, the criticism is so bad because if Abby just looks like that in this video game, do you even need to justify it? Does anyone justify how Chris Redfield looks like that in Resident Evil 5, right? And how about Marcus Phoenix in Gears of War? Why are all the male Gears of War soldiers absolutely huge and all the women are pretty skinny still? And why is it never established how much these characters eat? How do they keep this muscle mass in the post-apocalypse? And this is what they were criticizing The Last of Us 2 for. It's like, how could Abby look like that? It's the post-apocalypse. And the one thing I will say, which I think just disproves this stupid argument anyway, The Last of Us 2 is actually a game that goes out of its way to explain why she's big. Now, if you haven't finished this game or even started it, please do not watch any further. I'm going to spoil part of this game for you. Again, click off. If you don't want this spoiler, you should have played it by now. But if you don't care and you haven't played it, let's keep going. Well, basically, Abby in the game actually has both narrative reasons to get bigger, and she also has contextual reasons. So earlier in the game, she tells Owen when she's still skinny, this is when she's younger, that she benched like 185 pounds, right?
Here.
Okay. Holy look at you.
Pushed 185 pounds yesterday.
Yeah, right.
So they're already established in the context of her actually being someone who works out. Now, if you play the game a little bit further, you see that on the board of the gym, Abby works out a lot and she benches a lot and she has the record for various weightlifting things. She clearly takes her exercise very, very seriously. Also, in that same sequence, you see that the WLF base has loads of food. You even get a burrito, and apparently there's a choice of food. So you know that food isn't really a problem for this militaristic state that you are playing in. You see it growing everywhere. Abby is also like the top soldier in the WLF, so I'm sure she could get some more food. And she's also a soldier who's constantly, I guess, maneuvering around the environment, fighting the Seraphites, and just doing general soldier things. So how is it unrealistic for someone who works out and has access to food and someone who does all this physical activity to look like that if they focus on it? And clearly in the game, they've established this, and the point of her doing that as well, from going from someone who's fairly skinny to someone who's jacked, is because she's building herself up so she can take revenge on Joel, who took her father from her. So in narratively, it all makes sense as well. Like, why would she have desire to get this big? It's because she wants to carry out revenge on someone who, I guess, killed so many people when he took Ellie away from the Firefly base in the first Last of Us game, right? So all those other characters I mentioned, Marcus Phoenix, Cole from Gears of War, Chris Redfield, all these people, even Chris Redfield in like Resident Evil 8, it's never established like how these people maintain these figures or maintain these insane body types, right? But Abby in Last of Us 2 is striking because of the depiction of women in video games. She's not striking as a general woman you may see in like fitness communities or wrestling communities or women who play rugby on a Sunday and stuff like that. She isn't someone who's totally unrealistic in that way, and they also go out of their way to establish why she's like that. So it's totally realistic, but gamers went absolutely insane about her because she wasn't like traditionally pretty, because she wasn't extremely sexualized, and she was someone who was visibly, physically very, very strong, and not to mention She also killed Joel, their favourite character who can do no wrong despite being an awful person. So they hated her for that and believed it was just put in to like take over the series by strong female characters, and in this case someone who is actually very, very physically strong. And it's a major part of the game that she is physically strong, and it plays into my belief that the reason people had such a reaction to her is not because we do not see women in general life who look like this. It's because in our media, most women we get presented with are women who are very, very sexualized, and Quiet is one of the worst examples, but this happens across media. So when we see someone like Abby, who is more normal looking, and I would even say Abby is actually an attractive looking person. She has harsher features on her face, but I would not say she is ugly. But you saw that Aloy post, a lot of men will not be satisfied unless female characters look like the original Lara Croft. And again, it's totally ridiculous. And that's why I like The Last of Us so much, actually, because Ellie and Abby are both very normal looking characters. They aren't very sexualized and they aren't objectified, but they are both feminine in their own ways, and they are both attractive as well. These aren't even ugly people. But it just speaks to the mindset that a lot of men just want female characters to, I guess, fawn over or sexualize or think, you know, they could go on a date with. Not someone like Abby who they wouldn't have a chance at if they got in a fight with them. So yeah, having a body like Abby's, especially if you're someone who eats a lot, goes to the gym a lot, and does a lot of physical activity as a soldier, is not impossible. It's certainly not unrealistic, but also if there was no explanation of why she looked like this, who cares? It's just their choice to depict her like this, and you can make it up in your own mind, right? We all know that Marcus Phoenix is strong because he's a soldier, right? We don't all think about how much he eats all the time. So apply that logic to women. It's just a character design. But even if you want to go into the realism of this design, the game clearly outlines it for you. So why do people have a problem with this? There's only one answer, is because a lot of men think that women on screen only exist to give them sexual gratification. And there's also the fragile masculinity. They do not like seeing a female character who would be able to take them on in a physical fight, because a lot of men have this like fantasy about how great they are athletically. What's that like poll about? Most men think they could return a serve from Serena Williams even if they hadn't played tennis. Like, completely ridiculous, but of course shows you how fragile men are and how high opinion they have of their own athletic ability when they don't have any. Now, we've been talking a bit about like negativity in this video, but I will say I have found it good how many people are actually accepting these new depictions of women that are becoming increasingly common. Women with massive biceps and, you know, even giant women from Resident Evil 8 and stuff. Because a lot of people are accepting it, and a lot of people are liking the design, and a lot of people just think it's good to have more representation. I'm not sure how much of like a minority I would say the backlash is, but it is a very vocal group of people who do not like these things. And I think nerd culture in general has a massive problem with bigotry against women. And like I said, all this backlash against like Tifa's redesign, or the backlash against things like Aloy and stuff like that, is totally ridiculous, but shows how far we have to come, that you can't even just show like pretty women who aren't supermodels without some sort of backlash. Anyway, let me know what you guys think in the comments. If you want to find me on social media, at the Kavernacle on Twitter and on Instagram, support me on Patreon, join my subreddit, check out my second channel, and if you made it this far, thank you for watching.